Good morning and God bless you. So glad that you are joining us today. It is Right Now Church here online. Listen, it is Right Now Church. So that means right now, you're the church. If you want to be effective in doing that, would you do me a favor? Would you like this presentation right now? Would you tag us or tag yourselves or tag your friends and then share? I always think it's funny when we talk about tagging people because I immediately go back to whenever we were kids, or maybe you still do it now, and we played the game tag. You remember that? There was this imaginary it. Nobody knew what it was, but no one wanted to be it. Whatever it is, you don't want to be that. Because when you're it, everybody runs from you. And then you're trying to tag someone else so they can be it. Remember that? Nothing happened to you when you got touched. No one could see anything visibly, but whoever was involved in the game knew who was it and wanted to stay away from them. Stay with that for a little while because I'm gonna go somewhere with that. So I want you to keep that in mind. But it's interesting to me to think about how we find ourselves in situations where we really can't identify what's wrong. We just know something's wrong. And whenever we find ourselves in those moments where we're unmotivated, it becomes difficult to get out of that. So I really am excited to share this with you. But before I do, listen, would you do me a favor? In the comment section, we're going to be posting the number that you can reach out to through text so that you can text to give, or you can do that on our website. It's the beginning of the year. We have some exciting things in front of us, and we would really love for you to be a part of that. Right Now Church is about to move into our own building. Listen, we're on the last few steps so that we can hear back and know that we're going to get in. It's pretty much an in. We just got one more step we have to take. So when we do that, there's going to be so many things to do moving forward that you can come on board. And you might say, how can I be a part of that? Well, we're going to tell you. One of the ways that you can be a part of it is you can give. Also, please pray. We're going to go into 40 days in prayer here in the next couple of weeks. And once we're in this new building, we're going to have prayer time there, and we'd love for you to come be a part of that as well. We're going to do 40 days of prayer. Man, I'm telling you, we got big dreams. And because we have big dreams, that requires big transition. And I talked about last week in our live collective, 40 is that number of transition. It's what happens when we go into a place before we make a decision. All throughout Scripture, 40 days would happen before transition. Jesus was in the wilderness, fasted for 40 days before he went into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil and overcame him there. And the rest of his ministry was a ministry of victory, even up into the cross. Whenever we look at the cross, it looks like defeat. But those of us who are believers know that it was a time of victory. Jesus' entire ministry was based on victory after victory after victory over the power of the enemy. But it was because, number one, he was the Son of God, but also he taught us something. If you'll go into prayer and you'll meet the enemy after prayer, you have victory. His transition came in those 40 days. The spies went into the promised land for 40 days. Now, 10 people spent 40 days in that promised land and just saw why they couldn't do it. But 2 people learned, hey, this can happen. There was 40 years in the wilderness. Moses was 40, and then he had the encounter with the Hebrew soldiers, and he ran away. He was on the backside of the desert for 40 years before he saw the bush that was burning, and then went back into Egypt and brought them out of captivity. So 40 is a big deal. It rained for 40 days, and I could go on and on. So we're going to go into 40 days of prayer because we know that God is going to do something so big in 2023, and we want to be able to meet those decisions from a place of victory and from a place of wisdom and understanding. So you don't want to miss out on that. So give, pray, and then come be a part. Tonight, we're going to be at the Science Spectrum at 6 o'clock. We'll be in the southwest entrance that's on 74th Street. Ladies, if you're coming by yourself, it's right behind Target. Everybody knows where Target is. We're not too far behind Target. Turn like you're going to go to Target, but don't. If you want to go to Target, leave your house at 4. Go to Target for an hour and a half and then come on and see us, okay? Because you know once you pass that dollar section, you're going to stop. And then you're going to go through the whole store after that. So go on and come see us. Husbands, tell your wives you're going to go by Target, but then just keep driving and come see us, and you'll still have time to go to Target afterward. I promise. But at 6 o'clock tonight, we're going to be right there at the Science Spectrum Southwest entrance from 74th Street. You'll see the flags. You'll also see somebody smiling, ready to greet you and invite you in. So come join us. But I want to get back real quick to this to this game of tag, this being it. You know, I think about this game. This game could happen out in the open, and only the people who are playing it are aware of what's going on because they've talked about it or they've just done it. Like if you spent time with each other, I remember we would be walking to school or walking home from school as kids, and one kid would just walk up all of a sudden and say, "Tag, you're it," and you knew I got to tag somebody else because I cannot be it when I get home. You know, I got to get it off of me. And so we would talk about that. Just that one word would let you know, that one word and that one action would let you know that something has changed and something needs to happen. Well, I want to introduce to you, because 2023 is the year of limitless. And the first thing we're going to talk about how it's the year of limitless presence. But a lot of us have this understanding of how do I know what the presence of God is? And we have a concept of what the presence of God is. And sometimes it involves a lot of different ritual, if you will. There has to be lights turned down. There has to be music. There got to be smoke in the sanctuary. There's got to be lighting. There's got to be all these things before we can say we've experienced the presence of God. But in Psalm 91, something is introduced to us in the 91st Psalm. I'm going to come to you from my heart today. These two verses that I'm going to share with you literally changed the way that I perceive, the way that I seek, and the way that I practice living out my life in the presence of God. In the 91st Psalm, it begins by saying, "He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty." Now, I want you to think about that word real quick, the secret place. Have you ever been in on a secret? Has somebody ever told you a secret and then said, "Now, I don't want you to tell anyone else"? I always find that interesting that the person telling you the secret is already breaking their own rule. Think about that. The person saying, "Hey, I'm going to tell you a secret, but don't tell anyone else." Well, that's not fair because you're telling one else. If you're telling one else, I have to be able to tell one else. I've learned that when I tell a secret, I've learned this. I've told it, it's not a secret. It was a secret as long as I wasn't telling anybody else. But once I told somebody else, it was news. It was no longer a secret. And I want you to get this concept, grab this concept, put it in your mind. When I tell a secret, it's not because I don't want anybody to know. It's because I want them to find out slowly. Because it's the difference between opening the faucet and letting the water run out, or like when it's cold, opening the faucet, but only so it can drip out. So please, I want you to understand that today. When you tell your secret, you're not hoping no one finds out. You're practicing people finding out slowly at a pace. But I'm going to digress from that part of it for a moment. Secret, to be a part of a secret, to be a part of something and still exist in everyday life, to know something that as you know it, very few other people know, but you're still walking among the people with this information. I've always been great at holding on to the secret once I have it. As a matter of fact, I'll never forget I was 16 years old. I had a friend, and my friend was pregnant. And she told me, "Please don't tell anybody else." Listen, I held on to that secret for so long that when I saw her baby was a year old and I was shocked. Like, I still hadn't told anybody that she was pregnant, to the point that when I saw this baby, I didn't believe it was hers. I said, there's no way. But it was because I held the secret effectively. I never told anybody. As a matter of fact, I jokingly said to her that day, I don't think we can be friends anymore. I didn't expect this kind of decision out of you. And we laughed about it because I told her, I've been holding on to this secret. You never told me I could tell the secret. Back then it wasn't Facebook, so I couldn't see the pictures on her or Instagram. So I couldn't see the pictures on her story, so that I knew, oh, the cat's out of the bag or the baby's out of the womb. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure people know now. But having this secret, I lived among my friends and family. They had no idea I had this new knowledge because it was a secret, but the secret happened after someone told me. The psalmist writes, he who dwells in the secret place. I want to know about this secret place and how I can dwell there, because that word dwell means to live, to abide, and to sleep. Man, if I can sleep in the secret place. Did you ever build forts as a child? Whenever you were growing up playing with other kids in houses, and remember, we would build these forts. We would take towels or we would take blankets, and you'd stuff them in drawers and put them under mattresses, and you would build this fort that was still in the same room, but it was a secret place where you could go and hide. And whenever we were younger, we would play in these forts, and we played different things. We would play house, we would play war. Remember playing war? We would play all these different games, but they existed in the very same room. But the moment you said the word, let's build a fort, and then you went into the actions of building it, you had created a secret place in the same place that everyone knew existed. You took a bedroom that everyone knew in that house was the bedroom, but then you had built this new place within that room. The secret place of God is so similar. The secret place is not somewhere you go. I'm going to take you to the next verse. It says, he who dwells, lives, abides, and sleeps in the secret place of the Most High shall abide, there's that word again, under the shadow of the Almighty. So he says, I get to abide under a shadow. Once again, this lets me know that the secret place isn't hidden and far away. It's not under a rock. It's not in a cave. It's not in the dark somewhere. It's not a secret place when you think about like a closet, because he goes on to build. The Psalms always build on each other. A psalm always builds. It tells a story. It moves us in a straight line. So he says, if I dwell in the secret place, I'll abide under the shadow. Well, shadows are where? Out in the light, right? A shadow happens whenever something is blocking the light that is shining. Now you're in a shadow. Right now on this camera, we do work. Work is done to keep shadows in the right place so that light is shining. Right now, I'm surrounded by shadows, even though there's a light that's over me. Whenever he says we'll abide under the shadow, what he's saying is you're going to live out in the open, but you're covered by something. Oh, I want to know how to be covered by that something. To know how to be covered by that something, you got to go to the next verse. He says, I will say of the Lord, my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I will trust. That second verse is loaded. I'm going to start to unpack it a little bit. But if you're going to want to hear the rest, we got to see you tonight at 6 o'clock at the Science Spectrum, so that we're going to pick up from here and we're going to take off. So you got to be there. I want you to be there. Don't miss it. But he says, I will say of the Lord. So the secret place isn't somewhere. It's the result of what I say. He said, I will say about, not just say about anything, what I say about the Lord. I will say of the Lord, and then he says it, my refuge. Now, we live in a day and age where many people are seeking refuge. A lot of people are trying to come to this country as refuge. I'm not going to get into the politics of what my belief is on that. That doesn't matter. But I want you to realize something. When people seek refuge, they don't disappear. They just go into a region where they came from cannot affect them anymore. They're still out in the open. They're not hiding under rocks. Once they come into this country, they're fully visible. If a matter of fact, they can be fully visible by the place they come from, but where they came from can't come and get them and take them back. They get to exist here out in the open. Why? Because America has become their refuge. God is saying through the psalmist David, he says, if you will say of the Lord. Now that word right there is so important, because when I say of the Lord, it means my relationship with God is that he is Lord of my life. If God is Lord of my life, then he has the position to tell me what to do. Someone who is a Lord is someone who is in authority over you. It doesn't say that he's my refuge first. He says, I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge. So the one who instructs me is the one who protects me. We find ourselves in situations, and we hear all the time people who talk about who God is, and they refer to him as God, and they talk about how loving and kind he is. But the reality is, I cannot live under God's protection unless I walk in God's instruction. The big idea this morning is, are you willing to walk in his instruction? You might be talking to me, looking at me right now, and you're thinking, Pastor Javi, what do you mean about living his instruction? Do we do what he says? I cannot live under the protection of God's covering if I don't live under the instruction of his lordship. When God speaks to me about the relationships that I'm in and how I need to govern myself, when God speaks to me about sexual immorality, when God speaks to me about integrity, when God speaks to me about honesty, when God speaks to me about these things and I don't walk under that instruction, I am not under that protection. He says, I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge. He's the place where I hide when I'm in trouble. But before I can hide in him in my trouble, I have to be walking with him and following his instruction, because that'll protect me from trouble. As I close this thing out, I remember having a conversation with one of my kids. They had found themselves in a situation where they didn't do what they were told they were supposed to do. And now they kept saying, now I'm in trouble. I remember sitting them down and having this conversation. And I said, you're not in trouble because we found out. Now you're on your way out of trouble. Trouble happened when the idea formed in your head and you did what you were instructed not to do. That's when trouble happened. Trouble happened when you were doing what was opposite of your instruction. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce to you, it's not trouble whenever the bills aren't getting paid. It's trouble when the money was in our hands and we didn't allocate it the way we were supposed to. That was the trouble. That's when we were in trouble. We were in trouble when we were making the decisions that got us to the uncomfortable situation. Trouble doesn't come because the problem comes. Trouble comes when we don't govern ourselves in a way that protects us from the situation that was on the way. My wife is an amazing saver. Because my wife is great at saving and stewarding her money, we have found ourselves in situations where even though a need came, we were able, she has a great story. Matter of fact, I might even have her share it tonight because it's her story to tell, but I'll lace it like this. We had a situation where we needed to pay for something she really wanted to do. And I would consider it an emergency if we weren't able to pay it and do it. If we didn't pay the money, we were going to end up having to pay more money over time. Y'all know that 90 days, same as cash. Y'all know what I'm talking about. We were going to have to pay more money over time. So we wanted to avoid that. Well, because she's great at stewarding, whenever there was a bargain she could have been shopping for, she didn't let herself get into trouble. She didn't let herself go over that and never touch what was being reserved. Well, check this out. Since we had the money reserved and what was happening was something we really value, we decided, I told her, use that to take care of this, and then we'll replenish what's in our savings. She did it. She made the payment. And then something miraculous happened literally after she made the payment. If you want to hear about it, you're going to have to show up tonight. But my reason for even giving you the snippet of that story was that had she not taken care of and stewarded all the time that she'd been stewarding our finances, then those moments when she had decisions to make instead of saving, she didn't let herself get in trouble. Because she didn't let herself get in trouble back there, when we found ourselves in a situation that was going to happen anyway, this plan was going to come to fruition. This bill was going to come due. And because this bill was going to come due, it didn't create the storm it could have created had the decisions not been made along the way. But my wife allowed stewardship to be her instruction over the years of our marriage to put us in a position to be able to handle the storm that was coming anyway. I remember being in rehab, last story before I close out. I remember being in rehab, and while I was there in one of the meetings, someone said, it's amazing to me that once we start following this new lifestyle, then all this trouble comes. And they started to talk about how, they had a few appliances that had went out that they had to replace. And I remember I'd actually got asked to leave this particular session because there's no cross talking and you're not supposed to try to solve other people's problems. But I couldn't help myself, because when I heard them saying that it seemed like when they were trying to make better decisions, hard things happen. I couldn't let them stay there. And I said, have you ever thought that your appliances in your house were going to break anyway? And if they were going to break anyway, had you been spending all your money on and resources on the addiction that you have, you would not have had the finances to be able to replace them. Trouble didn't come because you got clean. Trouble was on the way. And thank God you got clean. You got out of trouble whenever you started making different decisions for sobriety, which put you in a position to fix this. Storms hit different when we don't have instruction. Storms come anyway. Every single season, it rains or storms outside. Why? Because the weather, the seasons change. Storms are always on the way. But if we don't govern ourselves in between storms in a certain way, they hit different. They hit really different, because instructions prepare us for storms. So he says, I will say of the Lord. The first thing you better say about God is he's your Lord. If he's your Lord, he's where you get your instructions. So to get to the secret place, to live in the shadow, I've got to have the proper confession about who God is. Man, I'm telling you, this thing is power packed. You're not going to want to miss it, because it will change the way you pray and it will change what you say. If we will change what we say, it will change the way we decide. It will literally change the trajectory and the course of our lives. So let me pray with you. Heavenly Father, we thank you. We love you because you're good. You are a perfect, awesome, omnipotent God. You are my peace in the storm. You are my God in situations I don't understand. You are where I get my instruction. Thank you for being welcoming. Thank you for opening the door to your presence so that I can have direct access whenever I go there. Not just when I need it, not just when I want it, but it is literally so open and available that when I go, I can sleep there. Thank you that you invited me over into your presence so that we could dwell together. I'm so grateful for the loving God that you are, the mercy that you've displayed toward us and those who are watching with me, and the grace that we walk in. Father, cover us. Let us live under the shadow of your wings and protect us. In Jesus' name, amen. Say different. Say who God is to you today. But if God is those things, if God really is those things in your life, then what are the actions that should follow? We're going to talk so much about that this evening. Come see us. Be there in person. We love you so much. God bless you from Right Now Church, and go be the church right now.